Member for Castries South.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise in response to the motion put forward to authorize the borrowing of $20 million US for the St.Jude Hospital reconstruction. Mr. Speaker, it is always difficult for one to say that you will not support the completion of a project which you know that the people of St. Lucia and the people of the South in particular are in dire need of its completion. But Mr. Speaker, when you put the entire context in which we are asked to approve this loan, it really begs a number of questions. We need to sit back and reflect on where we are in March 2020. And I listened to the members from Strozel, Saltibus, and Soufrière Force-Jacques, Mr. Speaker. And I want to say to both of them that there is absolutely no doubt in the minds of the majority of St. Lucians that healthcare is in crisis in St. Lucia. There is no doubt about that. And no matter how much they try to spin, to bob, and to weave, the reality is that healthcare is in crisis. And Mr. Speaker, it is a manufactured crisis. It is a crisis that was brought about by the callousness, the insensitivity, and the inefficiency of members opposite. I will recall, Mr. Speaker, that the member from Soufrière Force-Jacques was in this house speaking about execute, they will execute together with the member from Castries South is. And I told him, just wait and see who will be executed. In fact, he went so far to even say that on his side are the amateurs in execution. You recall that, members? And I smiled because I knew the days will come to haunt them. And the member from Strozel, Saltibus, opened that door. And I'm not going to tell you whether he was protesting outside St. Jude against the United Workers' Party for true or not, because I know the truth, whether he was there. The member from Strozel, Saltibus, I'm talking about. Not you. Not you. I won't tell you if it's true or not. But the member says the Labour Party was not forgiven by the people of St. Lucia for not finishing St. Jude at OKEU, but they will forgive them for not finishing it. Okay? He never said that. But they will forgive them for whatever wrongs they have done, because it has not yet been finished. And the same member speaks of deadlines that were given, and deadlines were given and not met. And the document that was before me, and the member from Miku South just walked out, I wanted to quote him. February the 8th, February the 6th, 2018. Hear what he says about OKEU. I think that the hospital is supposed to be functional, even according to the previous government, almost 3 or 4 years ago. So we are happy that we're able to get the dialysis lab up and running, and we're hoping to get other sections. So I believe by the end of this year, 2018 that is, the hospital should be fully functional. This is the Prime Minister, the member from Miku South, in February the 4th, the 6th, saying by the end of 2018, OKEU will be fully functional. He goes on to speak about health insurance. And he says, so we think that having a universal healthcare insurance program is the way to go. And so we are working with the different entities with the idea of hopefully by the end of this year, 2018, that we will be able to have a program that we can commence. Just 2. I can give you a lot more, Mr. Speaker. In fact, there's a whole batch of them, of promises and comments made. A whole batch. But a member from Strozel Saltibus is now a politician. So he is pretending that he wants to make excuses for his government. And attack people too, he did. But, Mr. Speaker, I don't think we can deny that St. Jude was not completed. We have been through this before, and the member from Castries North himself gave a very pointed presentation in this house, where he himself spoke of when he was Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, that he intended to finish St. Jude. He said so. And he said he understood what the government and Dr. Kenny Anthony went through, because everyone wanted to finish St. Jude.
Who said that?
The member for Castries North. He said that he understood. Not a member from Babuno, he would never say such gracious things. But Mr. Speaker, everyone intended to finish the hospital. But the government, this present government, said to the people of St. Lucia that they will immediately open OKEU and that they will finish St. Jude Hospital. But I want to return to my issue of the crisis that's in healthcare. The crisis. Because I have friends in the health sector, Mr. Speaker, and I speak to them often. I have many friends who are doctors. And this morning, Mr. Speaker, I was hoping we would have had this debate, because there were a number of school children here who wanted to hear the debate on this motion, to hear what we were saying about healthcare in this country, because it's a concern for St. Lucians. So we were told the hospitals would have been open, St. Jude would have been completed. But what did this government do? They stopped all works on St. Jude and commissioned 2 audits on St. Jude. And the member from Castries office came in this house and was accusing left, right, and center. They even said people would go to jail for St. Jude. 4 years later, Mr. Speaker, those audits have not been made documents of the House. And when the St. Lucia Labour Party get back into office in the next few months, we will make them documents of the House. They denied that there was a handover report until a talk show host and other persons leaked it. It could not be, Mr. Speaker, that they did not know there was a handover report. It could not be. You never knew one existed.
I'm critical of the Labour government.
He said, the member of Castries office said he never knew there was a handover report. He had every other document, including documents he said were erased on computers about how much was paid to who to investigate him, but he didn't know there was a handover report. That must have been the most ghost report that ever existed. But the report existed, and the report is present, and we can read the report. And the report in detail and prepared by the project manager, and I know he has a copy of it now. And I'm going to say to him, why don't you make the audit reports documents of the House? So St. Lucians can know for the millions of dollars that were spent exactly what the report says. It still has not been presented. But since 2016, when St. Lucians were already dissatisfied with the state of healthcare because they felt the hospital should have been completed and open, the decline has worsened from a government that promised the people of St. Lucia it would have solved all the healthcare problems. And a member from Soufrière Foster Jacques says he doesn't want us to come in here and talk to them about healthcare. You don't want us to come in here to talk about healthcare, but you want all of us to be in this national effort to fight coronavirus. It's a kind of schizophrenic attitude that they have. So you don't want us to talk about healthcare. You don't want us to come in this house and say anything as to how anything should be done, but you want us to be part of your national effort. We will be part, but I'll come to that later on. And the situation worsened. And I was shocked when I heard our Prime Minister, I think it was at the Stratford Town Hall, say to St. Lucians the reason why he was not opening OKEU, and I think I have a clip, Mr. Speaker, and may I take this opportunity to see, Mr. Speaker, we need to enhance the audio-visual capacity in this Parliament, so I could have played the clip for it to be seen, Mr. Speaker, where the Prime Minister is saying the reason why he has not opened OKEU, But I need a screen where it can be shown. Where the member from Miku South says he has not opened OKEU, because if you take the people at VH and you bring them to OKEU, it will be the same problems you had at VH that you transfer into OKEU. So he was holding on for a foreign company to be able to come and run OKEU for him. The member from Miku South said that. And the two members from Strozel and Soufre are defending that. They're defending that. Where you are saying you're not opening in OKEU because you're waiting, you're holding on for a foreign entity to come and run OKEU for you. And meanwhile, people are begging and saying, healthcare is going down the drain. Do something about it. You promised us you would fix the health situation, but you are holding on. And you say to me, the two members from Soufre and Strozel, you all are proud of what you all have done in healthcare so far, and the people will not punish you all. But I won't say much about that. Then, Mr. Speaker, St. Jude Hospital, I always wondered why it is that a greater effort is not being made to complete St. Jude. And I'm thinking, the member from Castle South is, and he's like the Minister of Concrete and Steel. Anything to do with construction and big thing is him. So you're not hearing the Minister of Health, but you're hearing him, Minister of Concrete and Steel.
Spell the steel.
Trying to get me in trouble, member from Beaufort South. I will not go down that road. But Mr. Speaker, I heard the member, the Minister of Health, is talking about new site for St. Jude Hospital. They will put a building next to the brewery. And I'm wondering, what is this all about? And then it leaks out that the government has already promised St. Jude Hospital buildings, that site, for medical school. So the member from Cassie's office must tell us what the truth is. Is it that this government has, and it has been said by them, and I'm repeating it, that they have made a commitment that St. Jude Hospital will be used as a medical school? So all the story about buildings not good and buildings is that, buildings are that, that's not true. Those were fabricated because the buildings have been promised to somebody for medical school. That's what we learned. Because we're now hearing, the minister is saying, member from Castries office, that almost 80% of the buildings will be used. Only 2 buildings, I believe, were broken down, demolished. 90. 2 buildings will be demolished. And an entire St. Jude Hospital will be housed in the present structure that we've been asked to borrow this money for. So this money is in effect. So Mr. Speaker, if the buildings at St. Jude will be used, why do we need this new entire structure? So it's not going to be used for the hospital. So that's the point I am making. So you have not refurbished, you've not completed a project because the buildings are not to be used for a hospital. And all the technical people, I've listened to architects, engineers, they're saying to us the entire St. Jude that is housed in the stadium can be transferred to one of the wings, the east wing I think it is, at St. Jude. No. I heard architects, I heard engineers. I ought not to mention any name in the House, Mr. Speaker, because, no, I mean, that's not the protocol of the House. So, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable.
So, if you can take the entire St. Jude Hospital now that's in the stadium and move it to one of the buildings, why didn't you do so? Why didn't you do it? Because you had decided that the buildings will not be used for a hospital. And it's going to be used for a medical school. So you're holding on at OKEU when people are dying. And you promised St. Jude for medical school when people are dying. And the members from Soufre and Strozel are saying the people of St. Lucia will not punish us for that. Mr. Speaker, Let us move on, Mr. Speaker. You know, Mr. Speaker, I have longed to hear either the member from Castro Southeast or the Minister of Health come and present what is the health plan that this government has. You won in June 2016. It is March 2020, almost 4 years later, and no St. Lucian can tell you they know definitively what this government is going to do as it relates to healthcare. We've been told we're going to get health insurance by the end of 2018. We've not received it. We were told that OKE will be fully functional by the end of 2018. It has not happened. We were told that St. Jude's will build a new St. Jude next to the brewery. That has not happened, Mr. Speaker. But meanwhile, Mr. Speaker, I can find the exact quote, Mr. Speaker, to play where it was said by Honorable Mary Isaac, the Minister of Health. See if you can find one of those things. Sorry, Mr. Speaker, but you know what has happened since then? And it's painful. It's really painful. I know of persons in my constituency, what they went through because of the healthcare crisis in this country. Now, if truth be told, Mr. Speaker, the member for Castro Central can tell you when she became Minister of Health in 1997 that she too faced a crisis. And we're on different sides now and we probably won't agree. But I remember how hard she worked, Mr. Speaker, to try to get VH back up to a certain level to function. I benefited from that, Mr. Speaker. but let's move on, Mr. Speaker. But the point I'm making, Mr. Speaker, is that people are suffering because of the healthcare crisis. I know a young man that was beaten. The night he was taken to accident emergency, he could not do an x-ray. Was sent home and told to come back next day. He came back next day, collapsed at the entrance to the x-ray room, and he died. He'd been bleeding from the night before. And if he had done an x-ray, they probably would have seen that and he could have been attended to. I know an old lady who had a stroke was in ICU, but they have limited beds, decreased beds in ICU. And she had to be moved, put on the ward, and she got a stroke the next day again and died. She was still in ICU on the machine. She would not have gotten it. I can go on and give you examples, personal situations I've had to relate to. And I'm not saying people before did not have complications in other medical facilities. But there have been an acceleration of those things in the last 3 to 4 years. And it's because of the callousness of members on the other side that they have not completed OKAU and St. Jude Hospital. And the members from Strozel and Soufre says, all of that can happen, but the people will not punish us. That's what they're thinking, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let's go on, Mr. Speaker. So we ask to support a loan for a new structure. I don't know. Be careful what I'm saying, Mr. Speaker. Did I say anything out of order? No? Okay, I shall proceed. But you can correct me if Mr. Speaker, this new structure, I wanted to get, Mr. Speaker, the exact words of the Prime Minister in introducing this motion. And maybe the member from Castro Southeast as the line minister, member from Castro Southeast. Maybe the member from Castro Southeast can assist me. What did I hear the Prime Minister say? That they give a contract to Fresh Start to start the steel frame structure. And then I heard that the Taiwanese firm is now the main contractor. And did they start off as a subcontractor or did they start off as a contractor? Because if you gave Fresh Start a contract to start a project, how is it now Fresh Start is now demoted to subcontractor and the Taiwanese contractor is now main contractor? I'm not understanding the dynamics now. I'm not involved in that level of contract negotiations, but it baffles me. You give somebody a contract without any tendering. Now you have 3 years to award that contractor, so there's no need to do any direct purchase. But then the company who gave it is now the subcontractor, and another company is now the main contractor. And I thought I heard the Prime Minister say, they still don't know what the final cost is. Which means we may very well come back to this house to borrow more money to finish the project. Because I'm sure I heard the member from Miku South, and I know the member from Cassius office will speak. Why is it that there is no cost? Why have you started a project and you're working according to the member from Cassius office 3 shifts a day? I think you said that somewhere. You're working expeditiously to finish it. And although they tell you they'll finish next year, you believe they might even finish this year or whatever. But you don't even know the cost of what you're doing. How do you start a project? How do you start a project?
All the bamboo cultists are gone.
How do you start a project? Accelerated construction program. And then you're saying you don't even know how much it would cost. Mr. Speaker, I need the member from Cassius office. And like I said, I know he's fully qualified as a Minister of Concrete and Steel to explain that one to us.
50,000 to supply bamboo.
But you know, the other thing that really struck me, Mr. Speaker,
The forestry minister
is that the facility at St.Jude, the one that we've been asked to borrow $20 million to complete, is a downgraded facility. A downgraded facility to what was being built at the St.Jude site. It's a
Honorable members, Member for Castries South is on the floor.
So that's the facility we've been asked to borrow the money for. Is a downgraded facility from what was previously planned for the St. Jude Hospital. Okay, if I am misleading the House, the member will correct me. I heard the member says it is a category 4 or something like that. The member explained, as far as I knew, a national hospital was being built at St. Jude. The member, I think he's going senile, Mr. Speaker, but let's move on because my time is running. So he says it's not been downgraded. It's not been downgraded, Mr. Speaker. But again, if we had audio-visual, I would have played the clip again for you, Mr. Speaker. You know, the best testament of the insanity of this government and healthcare? A level 4 facility. That's what he said it's going to be now. A level 4 facility. That's not what it always was. But let's move on, Mr. Speaker. Let me give you the finest example of the insanity of this government. At St. Jude, across the road, you had a garbage disposal site. For many years. For many years. Nobody on this side, the government side, ever thought you have a hospital and you should not have a garbage disposal site opposite it. But someone wants to have a horse race in St. Lucia. And his horses that are about 2 miles away, he says the garbage disposal site is too close to his horses. Shut it down. And this government shuts it down. Explain that to me. There was a hospital right there. There is a hospital right there. The garbage disposal site is across the road. And it is not a hindrance to the sick people. But somebody wants to have a horse race 2 miles away, or a mile and a half if you want to correct me. A mile. And he says it's too close, the dump is too close to his horses, close it down. And this government closes it down. And tell me, is that not insensitive? And the members from Strozel and Soufre will say that the people will not punish them for that kind of policy. The member from Strozel said that the people will not punish them for not delivering on health care. He never said that.
What did you say?
So, Mr. Speaker,
That didn't say what he said.
you want
I'm interested.
on a point of order? So, Mr. Speaker, the context of this, Mr. Speaker, is one of insensitive and callousness on the part of this government. But, Mr. Speaker,
Honorable members, the crosstalk is getting a little too loud. Honorable member, Soufre, Leader of the Opposition.
now, Mr. Speaker, all of what I have explained is of the crisis that's now in the healthcare system in St. Lucia. We've gone downhill at a rapid pace. And in all of that, we have coronavirus. And I want to say a few words on the coronavirus, Mr. Speaker. I want to say a few words. Mr. Speaker, I must tell you that I am disappointed with how this matter has been handled. I am disappointed, Mr. Speaker. And I think, Mr. Speaker, my disappointment is not necessarily an expression of criticism of the government, because I believe St. Lucians want us at a time like this to be able to show some kind of togetherness, a national, collective will to fight the coronavirus. And I am sure, like my colleague from Denry North, that we have St. Lucian professionals that can produce world-class plans of how we should deal with the coronavirus. I have friends who are among those medical practitioners, those medical planners, and I have a lot of faith and confidence in them, like many other people. But, Mr. Speaker, my problem is the deficiencies in policy, Mr. Speaker, because the professionals are not the ones who drive this fight against the coronavirus. This has to be driven by the policy makers, Mr. Speaker. The technical people will provide all the world-class plans that the member from Henry North spoke about. But somebody has to drive it, and somebody has to push it, and these have to be the policy makers. And I listened to the member this morning, Mr. Speaker, and it's quite ironic, Mr. Speaker, I will tell you this morning. It was almost comical to me, because in getting the member, the Minister of Health, to speak in this chamber, she was introduced under a standing order that speaks of strangers in the house. The right way to have done it was for a motion to be moved asking that the minister to address the House of Assembly. Instead, 83 one, which says we're inviting a stranger to come to speak to us, is probably a Freudian action, Mr. Speaker, because she's a stranger to many St. Lucians. She's a stranger to many St. Lucians. But, Mr. Speaker, I think, Mr. Speaker, that we are a bit late in this matter. And I want to share with you where my disappointment is and how I think some of those matters can be addressed, Mr. Speaker. I am wondering, on January 30th, the Director General of WHO announced that coronavirus, January 30th, and the Minister repeated it this morning, is a public health emergency of international concern, January 30th. Shortly after, I heard the Prime Minister was going on vacation for a few days. And I asked myself, why? Why? I'm not saying he should not have a vacation, but the WHO has just announced this is a public health emergency of international concern. I did not expect your highest decision maker to then decide to go on vacation. But I'm sure they were very capable people, and maybe the acting was probably even more capable, as you said. Yeah, I'm glad you said you're more capable, Mr. Speaker. But we did not activate NIMAC until February 20th. Mr. Speaker, can I proceed? Okay, they are capable people. So it was declared on January 30th by WHO a public health emergency of international concern. We activate NIMAC on February 28th. We took 28 days to activate NIMAC. Is it because we did not believe that it would become something so important we'd have to battle against it? And I remember the media asked me questions, and I asked, where is our Prime Minister? Where is he? And some of the supporters messaged me and said to me, you know, what are you talking about? It's all in China. They have the virus. We don't have no direct flights from China. And I was a little reluctant to go on Facebook and defend, because I didn't want, Mr. Speaker, to make this an issue beyond. I just wanted to make a simple point. When you activate NIMAC, in a sense, you are declaring war. It's like your war council. And when you activate NIMAC, you're ready for combat. And I expect to feel in St. Lucia, we are ready for combat. That's what it is. You declare war. It's not business as usual. You've activated NIMAC. And I want to ask members opposite, who is the incident commander for the fight against coronavirus? Can it be announced to the country so we know who is the person that is the incident commander? Can you tell us where is the incident command center for the fight against the coronavirus? This is a war. And when I speak to professionals overseas and in St. Lucia, the things they tell me that can happen if we are not sufficiently ready says we need to have an incident command center established at the soonest. We need to have an incident commander. Tell us who that person is. Tell us. We in St. Lucia need to know that more than washing our hands, and I must applaud the member from Beaufort North. He did a little video which I wanted to share with all parliamentarians in case you have the numbers. Wash your hands and wash your hands, and showing people how to wash their hands for his constituency.
They don't anything from Beaufort.
Well, it's a national effort.
They don't like Beaufort.
And as a parliamentarian, he's showing people how they should wash their hands. It's very welcome.
They don't like Beaufort North.
We need to know, beyond just telling people to wash their hands,
From the country.
who in St. Lucia is leading the fight against this virus, because we've declared war against the coronavirus.
I'm a country boy.
But more than that, Mr. Speaker, there are people in my constituency who come to me and ask me questions, and I cannot answer. So if, for example, a child in a school tests positive for coronavirus, what happens next? Maybe you know on this side. We don't know on this side.
Just announced today.
What happens next? Is the school immediately closed indefinitely? Is the school closed and a cleanup crew sent in to disinfect the whole school? Will every child now be told to self-isolate at home and do not come out on the streets? Tell the people of St. Lucia what are the policy statements on those matters. Let me tell you another important one, Mr. Speaker. In all of this, if we identify an incident commander, that person is the first person we must protect the most. And you know who is next in line? The people in the front line, then the Prime Minister. Maybe, do you have special protocols in place to ensure that the Prime Minister never gets affected? Because decision making will be critical. Decision making will be absolutely critical. And you have to assure us, St. Lucians, that you have in place the policy framework to make sure that the incident commander, the incident command center are totally and fully protected. That the Prime Minister as the head of cabinet and cabinet ministers there's a plan in place to make sure they are not affected, because they are going to make the most critical decisions to fight the virus on a day-to-day, well, not day-to-day basis, but in terms of what happens next. If you have to go to Parliament to pass special legislation, and there is no Parliament because half of Parliament is sick, what happens? Who's thinking of all those things? Maybe you all have, but we don't know. I don't know. I was glad, Mr. Speaker, when I came in, you had some hand sanitizer. And if you have any extra bottles, please, I would love to have one to take with me and to put in my office tomorrow when I have constituency day, Mr. Speaker. Even that, if we are parliamentarians and we may be called in here to sit and pass special legislation, maybe when we have constituency day tomorrow, maybe we should have something in place to make sure that there is no spread of infection there and protect your parliamentarians for decision making. The frontline staff will be treating people. What is being done to them to make sure they do not get infected? Imagine if all your nurses and doctors get infected. It was announced yesterday that the head of the New York Airport Authority got infected. He had been in the front line all for the last 2 weeks dealing with this issue. And he's now infected. Or affected, whichever, yeah? Mr. Speaker, can you tell us something about that? I wanted to hear the minister say those things this morning. Now, I heard, Mr. Speaker, that we're going to move VH to OKEU, and VH will now be a respiratory hospital. It means now you're running 2 hospitals. We don't have enough staff to run one VH. How are we going to run two? So there is a call. No. Let me proceed. So there's a call for people to come and offer their services, whatnot. It's more than just a call. It's more than just a call. And we are told that the elderly is probably the most vulnerable. We have a home care program. Have we called in all those people and given them special training and given them special equipment or whatever to make sure that the elderly they attend to cannot be infected? There's so much in terms of policy. I hear a lot of people talk about testing, test. Probably our biggest concern is not tests, but the ventilators that the minister spoke about this morning. How many ventilators are there in St. Lucia? I heard we're trying to get a couple more. But if we have 9 ventilators in St. Lucia, and there are 15 people waiting to ventilate, who gets priority? Is there a policy that says it? If a minister walks in and he needs to be ventilated, are you going to take somebody off and put him because he's a parliamentarian, a legislator, and a member of cabinet? Is there a policy that says who gets priority to be ventilated? Because we're in a crisis. We have activated NIMAC. We are in a war situation. Do we feel that this government is leading St. Lucia in a major battle against this coronavirus? I don't feel it. I don't feel it. And I do not want to be critical and to say, oh, government this and government that. Genuine concerns. What if there is an outbreak in the Treasury, Accountant General Chambers? Who is going to pay salaries at the end of the month? Have we thought of that? And what measures we have in place? What measures do we have in place? So I think, Mr. Speaker, this thing is a lot bigger than we're making it out to be. And maybe there are answers on the other side. Maybe there are. But it's not been shared with the public, and so it's not been shared with us. And you know what happens in situations like this? Prime Minister